Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it's the first time you are visiting. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've not already guessed by the title, today I'm going to be talking all about Nishane's newest collection. And this specific collection is to celebrate their 10-year anniversary, and I'm super excited to bring you this review because I have the little discovery kit here with the 5 newest fragrances. So if you want to hear more about Nishane's newest X collection, then please do keep on watching. Now, before we get started on the content, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out and I will continue making fragrance content like this in the future. Now, this was a highly requested video. I went to Essence in Milan and I got to discover the X collection in person last week, and so many people in the DMs were asking me more about these fragrances. Are the old formulations being discontinued? Are these stronger versions? Are they the X-ray version? Well, let me just clarify one thing. The originals are already X-rays, so these are not X-ray versions and they are not necessarily stronger versions than the originals. They are just remixed or tweaked versions of the old classics, and each of them kind of goes in a little bit of a different direction. So some of them are a little bit more potent or a little bit more deep and dark, whereas others are a little bit lighter and fresher, and I will explain one by one when I go through the collection. Now, I have the little discovery kit here, and I also do have a full-sized bottle of one of the fragrances within the new X collection. So this is 100 Silent Ways X. I'll give you a quick close-up of the bottle. And then in this discovery kit, I have 100 Silent Ways X, but I also have the other 4 fragrances from this collection. So you might already know this, but if you're wondering which 5 fragrances have been remixed by Nishane, we have Nishane X, we have Fan Your Flames X, Hacivat X, 100 Silent Ways X, of course, and then Wulong Cha. And I have 4 of the 5 of these in the original formulations, so I can do a side-by-side comparison and tell you what the key differences are between them. But I do think this is a cool concept because these are clearly bestsellers already for the brand, and it's given them a chance to remix and tweak them slightly to make them a little bit more different. And you might be thinking, well, do I need both of the same DNA if they're slightly different? And I think so. We see that with flankers all the time that come to the market, and people often buy just the slightly tweaked version of the original. And some of these definitely warrant owning both, in my opinion. Some of them are quite close in DNA still, and some of them, they go in a slightly different direction. So shall we get started on the review, because I'm sure you want to know more about the 5 fragrances. Now, as mentioned, the X collection is to celebrate Nishane's 10-year anniversary, and these are remixed versions of 5 of their most popular fragrances, and each of the bottles have a slightly different corresponding color. I will explain that quickly. So the X on the bottle, this 100 Silent Ways bottle, has the kind of dark green X, but then it has a flash of red, and that is to correspond with the red color of the 100 Silent Ways bottle. And then each of the new X bottles have a different corresponding color. So Fan Your Flames will have a slightly blue flash on the X. So the first fragrance I'm going to discuss is Nishane X, and this is the one that I've had the most comments about. I feel like it is definitely one of their most popular fragrance. That and Hacivat probably, but I'm not too sure. And I do have the original formulation of Nishane here. Now, I love this fragrance. I don't necessarily reach for it a lot myself. I find it a little bit strong and a little bit sharp for my personal taste. It is completely unisex. However, with Nishane X, I feel like they have softened the edges a little bit. So if you don't already know, Nishane is a beautiful, spiced, resinous, kind of benzoin, amber, vanilla fragrance with a beautiful ginger and bergamot hit in the opening, and then lots of spices. It is very complex. It is very beautiful. So I was like, what are they going to do with Nishane to make this different? Because it's already, in my opinion, a pretty complex beast mode fragrance. Well, what they've done is they've actually softened the edges, like I've mentioned. It's a little bit more rounded. I would say it's even more unisex leaning, so it could be more appealing to females now if you find this one a little bit too strong to wear. And they've changed up the note structure a little bit. So I'm going to read you the difference in notes. So what I've done is I've gone through and investigated all of the notes and looked at what they've actually changed fragrance by fragrance. So the new notes in Nishane X are lemon, water notes and melon, sage, lavender, green apple, cedar and cashmere wood. And then the existing notes are cardamom, ginger, bergamot, pink pepper, patchouli, blackcurrant, rose, vanilla, sandalwood, ambergris and white musk. So what notes are making this more rounded? There are some sharper notes in here, and I don't want to say sharp, but there's some more citruses. So they've added the lemon. You've got water notes, and I don't really get an aquatic feel, but maybe it softens it a little bit. The melon is a beautiful addition. I love the green apple. It makes it really juicy. And then the thing that I think softens the edges is the cashmere wood. Yeah, so Nishane X is definitely a little bit softer. It's more wearable to me. I would definitely reach for Nishane X over Nishane. I definitely get that melon. I get the green apple. The cashmere wood just gives it a softness. You won't notice it too much until the dry down, but I can still pick it out in the opening. I'm not sure I get the water notes as such. But I love the melon, I love the green apple. The lemon's definitely prominent. You're still getting that bite from the cardamom. You're still getting that ginger note, and the ginger note I adore. It's still very ambery, it's still very vanillic. So yeah, there is a noticeable difference between Nishane X and Nishane. Now, I don't know what one I would suggest to choose. I think it is really going to be down to personal preference, and I absolutely feel like you need to test these fragrances. But for me personally, I prefer Nishane X. I just find it a little bit softer, a little bit more rounded, and a little bit maybe less harsh in the opening. Now, like I said, I think Nishane, the original, is an incredible fragrance. I always recommend it. But in terms of being more wearable, I would reach for Nishane X a little bit more. They are different enough to own both of them, if that's what you are wondering. And I really do like the remixed version of Nishane. So that was the first one in this collection that I wanted to talk about. Secondly, let's go to Wulong Cha. So here I have Wulong Cha X, and here I have the original formulation. And I used to always think that this was one of the most underrated fragrances from Nishane, but clearly not if it's one of their most popular fragrances. I think this is one of the most beautiful spring summer scents, / you could wear it all year round. I love a tea-based fragrance. I think this one smells incredible on men. I personally find it super sexy. I would rock it too, but I just think it's a phenomenal fragrance on men. Now, is there a difference between the two? Yes and no. They're still very similar. Do you need to own both? I'm not sure. It depends how much you love this scent profile. They're definitely different, but they are very similar at the same time, if that makes any sense. I'm going to read you the notes now. I'm going to pop this down. So the new notes in Wulong Cha X is yuzu. I absolutely adore a yuzu note. Magnolia, green tea, and thyme. So the original Wulong Cha had oolong tea instead of green tea, so that's a noticeable difference already. And the notes that remain are bergamot, mandarin, litsi, fig, and musk. So this is Wulong Cha X. I absolutely adore the yuzu note, very fresh and zingy. I love the green tea, but I loved the oolong tea in the original as well. I don't get a huge blast of that magnolia, but it does add a slight creaminess to this because the original is very zesty and very sharp. And this adds a teeny bit of floral creaminess, not too much at all. It's definitely not a floral fragrance, but it just makes it a little bit more buttery. I don't think I get the thyme, but I still get the fig and the musk. This is very much a tea-based fragrance, or a citrus and tea-based fragrance. But Wulong Cha X is just a little bit more buttery, as I mentioned, a little bit more soft and rounded. Which one do I prefer? That's a difficult one to answer at this stage. I think Wulong Cha X, I love the additional note of magnolia, I love the yuzu, but then I do love a note of oolong tea. I don't know. I need to play around with it a little bit more. They're similar, but a little bit different. Do you need both? I'm not sure. If you love it, like I said, maybe. But the magnolia note definitely has a creaminess, but they are very similar in nature. Next up, we have 100 Silent Ways X, and we have 100 Silent Ways. And if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you already know that I adore 100 Silent Ways. So of course, this one had to be my first X fragrance. Now, are they different? Yes, they are. I do actually notice quite a big difference in these two, because I find the X version a little bit more sultry, a little bit deeper, and I explained it in a first impressions video, as this is the night version of 100 Silent Ways. So if 100 Silent Ways is day, 100 Silent Ways X is night. It has this additional leather note. I do get a slight smokiness, which there is nothing in the notes to suggest there's any smoke in here. And I do also perceive a very soft, slight oud, which again is not in the notes. But it just gives this a little bit of edge. It's still very floral, still very feminine, but it takes down the sweet florals a little bit and just gives it a sultry edge. And I feel like so many people are gonna love this new remixed version. I still absolutely adore the original, but this is its sexy sister. So let me read you the difference in the notes quickly. So the additional notes in 100 Silent Ways X is iris, heliotrope, leather, and patchouli, and they've taken away the orris, the vetiver, and the sandalwood. Do I get much of the iris and heliotrope? Yes and no, because what I feel like those two notes are doing is they are softening the edges of the original DNA. It was a very sharp, sweet floral fragrance, as I mentioned, and the iris and heliotrope gives it a powdery nuance, softens it a little bit, and takes it into a more sultry direction. Now, the additional notes of leather and patchouli is what is making this a more night version. I could have sworn there was a woody note or an oud in here, but there is not. I get a slight smokiness from that leather. It is definitely not super prominent. I wouldn't have necessarily known there was leather in here if I hadn't read the notes, not how I perceived it on a first impressions at all. And the patchouli is obviously giving it a little bit of that depth too. Now, of course, we all perceive notes very differently. I would 100% recommend sampling these fragrances, but 100 Silent Ways X, do I prefer it to the original? I'm 50-50. I love them both equally. They are actually slightly different fragrances. They're in the same family, but I feel like they've done a really good job in making them different enough to warrant owning both of them. Now, if you were a guy and you found 100 Silent Ways a little bit too feminine in the past, then absolutely try out this new formulation. But anyone can rock this one. It's an absolutely gorgeous fragrance. I love it, and I highly recommend 100 Silent Ways X. Next up, we have Hacivat X, and then the original Hacivat. So this is the one I don't own a full bottle of, but I do have a decant. So luckily I can still do a comparison side by side. And this is a fragrance I didn't feel like I personally needed to own. I feel like I prefer this on a man. That is just my personal preference. However, what is the difference between this and the new Hacivat X? Now, my thinking is they wanted this to be more of a unisex fragrance. You normally see mostly men wearing Hacivat or talking about Hacivat, and maybe they wanted it to be a little bit more appealing to women too. And I can see what they've done here. They have definitely made it a little bit wearable for someone like me who maybe wouldn't wear the original. They've added some florals in here, which makes it a little bit more soft, and added a new citrus note up top. So let me read you the notes quickly. The new notes in Hacivat X are lime, Tunisian Orange Blossom, and Haitian Vetiver. And then the remaining notes are pineapple, bergamot and pink pepper, jasmine, cedar and patchouli. They've taken away the grapefruit. There's less woody notes and there is no oak moss. So I feel like this new formulation is a little bit fresher, and that addition of the orange blossom just takes this into a new direction. I'm really enjoying this new X formulation. I don't know how the OG lovers of Hacivat will feel about this new formulation, but me personally, I think it's absolutely gorgeous and I would totally rock this one, and I feel like it would still smell absolutely amazing on a man too. And another thing that I wanted to mention, because it got a lot of comments when I posted this on my Instagram stories, is there is a Hacivat Oud coming out. Yes, Hacivat Oud, and I feel like that is going to get a lot of hype and a lot of excitement. So if this one maybe wasn't the direction you were hoping for, then just wait for Hacivat Oud, because that one is absolutely gorgeous. It still has the Hacivat DNA, but it definitely is very different from the original. It has that same oud that they've used in Manna and Nefs. It's strong, it's deep, it's sultry. I'll do a review on it in a different video. I don't have a sample, but I did smell it in Milan. But I really like Hacivat X, which is what we're talking about at the moment. I prefer it over the original, but that is just for me personally. I think both are great fragrances, but definitely sample this one when it comes out. It's going in a different direction. I love the additional note of lime and orange blossom, and I feel like it's going to be more popular with women now. And last but by no means least, we have Fan Your Flames X and we have Fan Your Flames. Now, spoiler alert, I prefer the original Fan Your Flames than the X version. And this is the one that I knew instantly when I smelled them both that I preferred the original. However, I do feel like X is going to be popular just because of how they've changed the notes up. So let me read you the notes. The additional notes in Fan Your Flames X are mastic, thyme, carrot, and patchouli. And the notes that remain are coconut, rum, tobacco, tonka bean, cedar, and oak moss. And I love the original. The coconut, the rum, the tobacco, tonka bean, oak moss, cedar, they are notes I absolutely love. Do I like it with the mastic, thyme, carrot, and patchouli? Not really. It's not, for me, it's not to my taste, but it has been taken in a different direction. And this is the one that I feel like is stronger and more potent. So it could almost be an extreme version of Fan Your Flames. That's how I perceive it. But what I love about the original is that boozy quality, the coconut with the rum. And I feel like by adding the mastic, by adding the thyme and the carrot and the patchouli, it's just a little bit too strong for me. But if you are someone that wasn't getting enough from the original Fan Your Flames and you wanted something a little bit more deep, a bit more robust, and a little bit more earthy, then you might prefer the X version, but I will stick with the original on this one. Now, hopefully I will review these fragrances in more detail in a video to come. This is very much still a first impressions. I've only had them in my hands for a week at this point, and I need to play with them a lot more, wear them on the skin, but I wanted to bring this video to you because so many people were asking questions, and I don't think there's anything out on YouTube yet, but we will see when this one actually goes live on YouTube. But I hope you found this useful in some way. I am really excited about the new X collection by Nishane. It definitely is getting a little bit of buzz at the moment. If I was to pick my top three, I am going to say 100 Silent Ways, Nishane X, and Hacivat X actually, but I love Wulong Cha X. I can't really pick. I like the originals, of course, if I own the bottles already. But that was a roundup of the Nishane X collection. Please do let me know down in the comments what you think. Are there any that interest you? Are you going to get samples? I just want to know your thoughts, so please do let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching today. I hope to see you all in a future video to come. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.